And we're kicking off with NXT Deadline, which featured some of the Gold brand's top names, as well as someone fans may not have expected to see. During the opening segment, CM Punk made his presence felt on camera alongside NXT head Shawn Michaels and earned a massive ovation to the crowd. Punk shared his intention to make amends and humorously pointed out that the talents backstage wanted to take selfies with him, leading to his on-screen appearance with Shawn Michaels. The Best in the World then teased fans as to what brand he might sign with on Monday and made it clear that NXT is an option alongside Raw and SmackDown before he gave HBK a hug. The crowd's enthusiastic response was evident, with resounding CM Punk chants echoing through the arena as the ex-AEW star continues to be truly over with the fans. Punk may have spoken about hanging with talent backstage, but what was he actually like? Well, it turns out what he said on screen wasn't that far from the truth. House of Wrestling reports that Punk was hanging around the Total Mortgage Arena all day and had been great around everyone, and his interactions with Triple H was called legit very good. Sources close to Punk are excited and have said that he is riding a massive wave of happiness as the veteran is looking to put everything that happened in AEW behind him and start fresh. So far, all the reports about Punk backstage in WWE have been positive, though there are some who have questioned whether Punk's squeaky clean behavior behind the scenes can last. In a video shared to WWE's social media, Punk can be seen backstage just before his NXT Deadline entrance, and fans may have noticed a certain old rival of Punk's in the video. Punk was seen sat next to somebody, and while their face wasn't shown, the tattoos on their arms and the mask in their hand made it clear that this was his 2010 nemesis Rey Mysterio. As we said, Punk appeared on the NXT Deadline broadcast alongside Shawn Michaels and may have subtly trolled HBK by wearing a hoodie of Shawn's old rival Bret Hart. Punk said that he hopes HBK and Bret mend fences, something that realistically happened years ago, so while this may have been a gentle prank, don't expect some backstage drama to stem from it. For years, fans thought they'd seen the last of CM Punk in WWE, but that clearly isn't the case anymore. And what do you make to his appearance at Deadline? Sound off in the comments. Dominik Mysterio was at Deadline to defend his North American title against Dragon Lee, but was too focused on his father Ray at ringside. Ray joined commentary where Booker was unafraid to talk up Dirty Dom and talk down the master of the 619's career, and while the match started slow, the pace quickened later in the bout. At one point, Dominik hit the Three Amigos on Dragon Lee, but that wasn't enough to put him away, and the Luchador caught Dirty Dom in a tree of woe outside the ring and used a gnarly double stomp. As the pace continued to build, the chemistry was obvious in a contest that had the crowd invested throughout, and by the climax, things were moving faster than you'd expect from a PLE. In the end, Dragon Lee hit a tilt-a-whirl DDT to get the win and the title, and while this is probably the end of the ex-Con's time in NXT, he did well with the spotlight. Dragon Lee and Ray hugged after the match, celebrating the Luchador's first title win in a sign of how much faith WWE has in this relative newcomer. In the Carmelo Hayes vs. Lexis King match, there were plenty of distractions to keep Melo struggling to focus on the task at hand, but he'd eventually get the win with nothing but net. King taunted Melo after the match, saying he didn't attack Trick Williams, but appreciates the premium live event spotlight, and this was a somewhat overly slow match for the pair. This is a surprise as Melo has done well in long matches, and it felt like he had to do a lot of heavy lifting in what felt more like a mid-NXT TV match. The action was fine, but this should have gone half the time it did, and King never looked like a real threat to Melo and lost clean and in decisive fashion. Despite this, NXT played King's music after he revealed he pretended to attack Trick to get a PLE match, and it all came off awkward and a waste of Melo's talent. Dijak and Josh Briggs opened the men's Iron Survivor Challenge before Tyler Bate joined at 3, Trick Williams entered at 4, and Braun Breaker quickly earned a lead after entering 5th. With 2 minutes left, Trick Williams had no falls, but after rolling up Briggs, Dijak, and Bate, Trick caught Breaker with a running knee with seconds to spare to get 4 points and the win. Whoever produced this match was meticulous and clearly planned ahead of time, to the extent that it felt almost too choreographed at times. The action, though chaotic, was never hard to follow, and the story of Trick rising up in the last 2 minutes was well done and elevated the contest as a whole. It's time to seriously consider crowning Trick as NXT champion, as he's the most over man in NXT right now, and one of WWE's most over stars period, and this match has made his moment. Dijak was heavily protected in the finish, and should still be in title contention. Briggs looked like he belonged. Breaker and Bate were good throughout in the better of the 2 Iron Survivor matches. In steel cage action, Roxanne Perez faced off with Kiana James, but this match may have seen a major change to the iconic pro wrestling stipulation. During the show, it was announced that to win the steel cage match, you had to pin or make your opponent submit, seemingly doing away with the escape method to win. It has always been somewhat strange that a blood feud in a steel cage could be decided by who runs away first, and it's unclear if this change was just for this match or for all cage matches going forward. Perez and James have tied in singles action, so their rivalry may continue, though it's assumed that James will work with Lyra Valkyria in 2024, and NXT needs to build up the heel for that spot. Perez has done well in NXT, but it may be time to move on, as she has more value to bring to Raw or SmackDown in 2024. In the Women's Iron Survivor Challenge, Blair Davenport and Fallon Henley opened the match before being joined by Tiffany Stratton, Kalani Jordan, and finally Lash Legend. Legend stole 2 falls on Henley and Stratton when she arrived, but it was Davenport who managed 3 falls, 2 over Henley and 1 over Jordan, to win the entire thing. The winner called out Lyra Valkyria, who was ready to face off with Davenport, but Cora Jade arrived to attack the Valkyrie from behind and hold her NXT championship high. This year's Women's Iron Survivor Challenge was much better than last year's, and it helped that Henley and Stratton were the heart of the action and sold their rivalry consistently. The action did struggle when Stratton and Henley were outside of the ring, and Lash Legend was heavily protected in her 10 minutes and barely left her feet throughout the match. Davenport and Jordan were solid, but saw little focus outside near falls, but we will commend WWE for picking Davenport, the right choice, as the winner. Davenport has momentum and a strong story building off her NXT reintroduction, but is unlikely to dethrone Valkyria though, especially with Jade taking some of her spotlight with a return. On the pre-show, Axiom earned a big win over Nathan Frazer, hitting a top rope Spanish fly and a golden ratio kick on Frazer to win. In the main event, Baron Corbin came out on a motorcycle to a Hellboy-inspired Titantron and proceeded to target the ribs of Ilja Dragunov. Corbin mocked the Mad Dragon with a hug before hitting the Uranagi, and just before the finish, Dragunov gave a hug of his own and whispered in Corbin's ear. The NXT champion sold his ribs throughout the match and had trouble lifting Corbin and hurt himself on a diving senton. In a highlight of the match, Corbin countered the Torpedo Moscow with a deep 6, then planted the Mad Dragon with an inverted fireman's carry slam into a brainbuster for a near fall. In the end though, Dragunov hit a jackknife powerbomb and 3 H-bombs to set up the Torpedo Moscow for the win, and post-match, Trick Williams made his presence felt. Williams made it clear he's coming for the NXT Championship, with Carmelo Hayes following slowly behind, ending Deadline on somewhat of a cliffhanger. It was always going to be tough to work a slower main event style after the Iron Survivor Challenge matches, but Dragunov and Corbin sold the physicality in a distinct way to the rest of the card. Dragunov is one of the best in the world, and this match proved he can make every match feel special, and this was Corbin's most complete match to date, up there with his Melo Hayes bout. Sure, Dragunov was never going to lose, but the match didn't need the prospect of a title change to land, and while it wasn't quite as impactful as the Men's Iron Survivor Challenge, this match told its own story as the important main event. So that was NXT Deadline 2023, and what did you make of the show? Sound off in the comments below. In the AEW Continental Classic, Bryan Danielson has been racking up points as part of the Blue League, but after his victory against Daniel Garcia, showed some unsportsmanlike behavior. After their impressive match, Danielson spat on Garcia, and in a post-match interview, Danielson admitted that sometimes he does things and doesn't really know why. Danielson recalled wanting Garcia in the Blackpool Combat Club and said that had he joined last year as was being teased, he would have treated Garcia like a son. Instead, Garcia chose to remain with the Jericho Appreciation Society, and Danielson then spoke about the promise made to his daughter for this year to be his last as a full-time wrestler. Bryan has said that nothing will stop him from winning this tournament, as he likely won't have another chance if there is a second Continental Classic, and is holding nothing back so far. Whether Danielson goes on to win the Continental Classic, time will tell, but based on spitting on Garcia, the American Dragon is focused on this tournament being his greatest performance yet. On AEW Collision, Andrade El Idolo defeated Bryan Danielson to earn 3 points in the Continental Classic, and Danielson's eye was, at times, the focus of Andrade's offense. Post-match, Andrade checked on Danielson, but was pushed away by Claudio Castagnoli and Wheeler Yuta, who had no interest in being helped by the Continental Classic rival. Next week, Andrade El Idolo will make his return to CMLL for the first time in 8 years, but not everyone is thrilled about his upcoming appearance with the company. CMLL and AAA have had bad blood for years, which has often come at the expense of talent, and with AAA and AEW being close, it's no wonder Andrade's CMLL appearance has caused a backlash. In fact, the backlash has been so great that Andrade has now responded, and on Twitter, El Idolo pointed out that it was in CMLL that he started his career. CMLL helped open the door for Andrade to work in other companies, including AEW, WWE, and AAA, and he's pleased to be returning next week, regardless of what some may say. The Montreal crowd were in for a treat when two Canadians, Kenny Omega and Ethan Page, went head-to-head, and there was a handshake prior to the match before Omega got the win. Singles matches with Omega on TV feel rare these days, so it was good to see him in action, even if the winner was never in much doubt. In Continental Classic action, Eddie Kingston earned 3 points against old rival Claudio Castagnoli, giving the reigning NJPW Strong and ROH World Champion a much-needed win. Wardlow defeated Willie Mack in another bout that ended in referee stoppage, and while it was longer than recent Wardlow squashes, it's time we see him face someone who will give him a challenge. In tag team action, Commander and Penta El Cero Miedo defeated Angelo Parker and Matt Menard, despite the pair native to Quebec firmly having the Montreal crowd on their side. On this week's SmackDown, Asuka got a hard-fought win over Charlotte Flair, in which Flair seemingly suffered a leg injury, and that match also saw interference by Bayley. It was the role model's distraction of Flair that allowed Asuka to take the advantage, but while Asuka got the win, the rest of Damage Control have had an interesting reaction to her role in the match. In a digital exclusive, Bayley tried to defend going against the group's orders to stay backstage, saying that she was trying to help Asuka win, which seemingly was enough for the group. Asuka thanked Bayley before she, Io Sky, Kairi Sane, and Dakota Kai hugged Bayley, and it's been quite some time since Damage Control were appreciative of what the role model has done. With that said, many expect it's just a matter of time before Bayley is kicked out, and we'll have to see just how much longer she has left in the faction she founded last year. And we're ending with Impact Wrestling as they held their Final Resolution event, which was their final major event for Impact of 2023, and the final Impact event, it seems, for Deonna Purrazzo. That's according to Fightful, who report that Purrazzo's contract is up and that she's been exploring her options as a free agent, with no new deal with Impact being reached. Purrazzo was once part of WWE NXT, but has come a long way since her time with the Gold brand, and we'd be surprised if AEW didn't have an interest in the former Knockouts champion. Stardom could also be an option for Purrazzo, and New Japan are trying to boost their own women's division, so it'll be interesting to see where she goes next.